Now, we just looked at what is uncontestably my favorite method of attacking Judogatame from mount, which is to use a finger walking ratchet method to bring my opponent's arm northwards, and then from there make the turn into Judogatame. As much as I favor that method, as much as I push it on my students, there's always going to be that day you run into stone wall resistance and your opponent just stops your arm from moving. Okay, you're trying to walk him up and you're losing the battle. The guy's arm just isn't going where you want it to go. What are you going to do now? Okay, if I ever get into a situation where I've gotten my hand inside and I'm walking up like this and I just cannot get his elbow up to the shoulder line, I just can't. Okay, what am I going to do? What I'm going to do is I'm going to let my opponent get an overhook on me. Go back. I'm going to take my elbow inwards and I'm going to let him think he can overhook my arm, trap my arm in place, bridge, roll, and reverse me. As I walk up, normally I keep my elbow high, so when he tries to overhook my arm, he can't do it. But I give him a bait. I lower my elbow, so he thinks, oh, I've got him. The moment that happens, I bring my head to my own hand. That unweights my feet and makes it very easy for me to pommel my foot from mounted position to side position. And now you got an underhook. Because I have an underhook, it's an easy thing for me to bring my elbow into his sternum and put my hand down on the floor. From here, I tripod over my training partner's head and I put my ear on my training partner's buttocks. When he goes to pull his arm free, it's shockingly difficult. And as a result, I can easily bring my leg in behind as a wedge and my second leg in front as a wedge, so that his shoulders are being controlled by my knees. Now, I simply turn the corner and set into the beginnings of a Judogatame. You'll remember this is the so-called quarter Judogatame, which I don't particularly favor. There's no reason why I have to stick with a quarter Judy. I can easily feed my leg across to the other side, and now we find ourselves in the perfect Judy position, ready to go on the attack and into our various finishes. Once again, from a situation where we're mounted on a training partner, we do a good job of getting cross-face and walking the arm up as far as we can, but we get stymied and I cannot make further progress. So from here, I drop my elbow and I let him take what he thinks is a potentially escape-worthy overhook. I turn my head towards my hands and I pommel my leg over the top into a side position. From here, I take my elbow inwards to the sternum and my shoulder over his elbow. I come up into a tripod, which enables me to control the back of his head with one knee and the front of his head with the other. As a result, we can easily sit into a quarter Judogatame. From the quarter Judy position, it's very easy for us to make the necessary switches and end up in a full Judogatame situation like so. Once again, just going to throw that on the mat, facing this way. From here, I'm walking my way up and I cannot move his arm, just can't beat his arm. I lower my elbow and give him a bait. Then I bring everything over. I often slip the head out when I do this. You don't have to, but I often do. I put my head down towards my hands and I pommel my foot from one side of his body across to the other. My elbow goes inside, I stuff the head, I put my ear on his hip and I go into a tripod. My two knees pinch around my training partner's head, and from here we sit into the Judogatame position. As always from here, look how I pommel my foot from one side across to the other, and now we're in the perfect position to control the Juji. From here he tries to move out, and it's so difficult. You've got excellent control of him, and you're ready to finish. This is a very simple way to deal with people who are good at clamping down with the elbow and preventing your ratchet method of bringing his arm up into a vulnerable position. If I can't bring the arm up into a vulnerable position, I create that bait, let him take his overhook, and then skip to the side and finish with Jujigatami. To a vulnerable position with the elbows taken above the shoulder line. There's always going to be days you feel you can't get this done, okay? No problem. It's usually because we do what we did before. We go in, we control our training partners here. We do a good job of getting down below the forearm when we come in. And when my opponent feels the danger of this ever-increasing ratchet-like movement with the elbows getting straightened, they will take their arm and overhook your arm. And as a result, this will shut down your ability to do the one thing you need to do, which is to get a cycle of elbow moving and head moving, okay, and walk northwards. Now there's a danger your elbow can be crunched in, and from here it can bridge and take you over into bottom position. So whenever we feel our opponent has successfully overhooked the arm, we're going to take our leg and pommel our foot over. Okay, don't stand up and step, that's a disaster. We come in, we turn our body in, my foot pommels across, and then from here we move over to the side. Now we can use this underhook against him. We bring our hand in and we draw our elbow onto our training partner's sternum. I lock everything in place by putting my ear down to my training partner's hip, and I step over my training partner's head into a tripod north-south position. I need now to control his head. So my leg comes through and hooks from behind. The second leg comes around and we scissor two legs around the head. As my opponent goes into a defensive arm position, we sit down into the classic Jujigatami position. From this form of Juji, it's almost always a good idea for us to switch our hands and bring our leg across to the other side. So we go from a relatively weak quarter Jujigatami into a much stronger full Jujigatami position. Once we get to a situation like this, we do what we always do. We guide his elbow underneath our armpit so we can come up and access the wrist. Once we get our elbow to his wrist, we can pull successfully. We never want to pull elbow to elbow into our opponent's strength. We always, on the other hand, want to take his elbow to a position of weakness underneath our armpit, and then from here, we're in the perfect position to start to separate our training partner's hands and go on for a finish. So once again, we attempt the previous move and try to ratchet the arm northwards, but my opponent does a smart thing and overhooks. Immediately from here, we turn our leg and pommel across our training partner's body. Now, our hand braces on the floor. We have to take our elbow to our training partner's sternum. We lock his elbow in place with our head position, and we put weight into it with a tripod. I take my knee and capture the head from both sides. And as a result, we can easily sit into a very strong Jujigatami position. From here, we pass our foot across, and now we're in the perfect situation. We go through and capture our training partner's wrist at the elbow. Now from here, when we sit back, we take our two hands, lock up. My opponent's left hand is taken to my left shoulder, two hands on one. My two legs come back towards myself. We're in a perfect finishing position. Okay? Let's get it started. Okay, we're looking at the idea of attacking Jujigatami from mounted position. We've seen our primary method is always to walk our opponent's arm up using the ratchet method and taking his elbow out of position. We've seen if we can't do that, I'll lower my elbow, bait him to take an overhook, and then I'll move around his body into another form of Juji. Let's look now at one of my other big favorite methods of attacking from mounted position. My opponent's down mounted, has his arms in good position, and I'm having a very difficult time getting his elbows up into the vulnerable positions that we favor. Let's understand something. It's hard for me to move his elbows away from his hips, but it's incredibly easy for me to do something else. It's incredibly easy for me to take my opponent's right hand outside of his right shoulder. I'm operating at the end of the lever, so no matter how strong he makes his arms, I'm just going to start off in the mounted position. I'm going to take my right hand to his right wrist, make a strong arm, as strong as you can. And then from here, I'm just going to push his hand outside of his own shoulder. Even just my hand can create a strong push. But even better is for me to use my body weight and bring everything down into a position where now I can just post the elbow. Okay? So very often when I work with someone in mounted position, I'll just be mounted on like so, and then in one motion, just push everything out and down to the side. Looks like I'm interested in American lock. But the truth is the American lock is very difficult to finish on someone who has a decent skill level in this position. Notice, however, that his elbow is right on his shoulder line. So there's no reason why I can't just slip my arms in and just put my head down. Now, when he tries to bring his hand back in, it's locked in place. And from here, it's a very easy thing to finish with the finger walking that we always favor. Now from this position, as always, we put the hand on the tricep. I take my knee all the way up as a wedge. I bring my body weight over the other side so I can make the turn, form a satisfactory wedge behind my training partner's body, and then from here we're in the perfect position to scoop the leg, bring my ear to his thigh, and sit down into the perfect Jujigatami position. Once again, we've got an opponent, and it's very hard for me to get underneath his wrists and walk everything up. In those circumstances, I will play mounted position, then in one motion, just take everything over to the side. Okay, it doesn't matter which side you try. We're always looking just to push down to the side. Don't give any warnings of what you're trying to do. So we go in here, we fake the neck, etc., etc. Then in one motion, we just push it straight down. Then I post on top of my training partner's elbow. You can't stay here forever. If he bridges, I'm going to lose the position. Okay, so we've got to move relatively quickly in these situations. We push everything down across the body. I post, I just put my head down. Now when he tries to recover position, it's so easy. Get everything up. Now from here, I go around the corner, making sure that my knee covers so we can find ourselves in this perfect attacking position. Once we're in here, we bring everything inside, we scoop the leg. Always, the leg goes over the head first before we commit our buttocks to the mat, and we're in the perfect Jujigatami position. Let's talk about the use of arm wraps to set up Jujigatamis from mounted position. An arm wrap, often referred to by the way as a gift wrap, it's the same idea. An arm wrap is any situation where my opponent's arms get wrapped across his own center line, like so, and held in place by my arms. They come in two main forms. Let's have a look at them now. The most well-known form, as I said, often referred to as a gift wrap, is a situation where we take our opponent's arm across the center line, and from here, my left hand controls my training partner's left wrist. Sorry, my left hand controls my training partner's right wrist, just like so. Okay. In the old days in jiu-jitsu, this was often favored as a punching position in the early versions of mixed martial arts, and you'd see people punching from positions like this and working like so. It's done in this form. It's of negligible use in a grappling match. It definitely can be useful in a mixed martial arts or street fight scenario, but it's not very useful in grappling. It only becomes useful when we add a figure four element to it, where my hand comes in and applies a figure four grip. This is useful. Okay, this is a decent, not a great punching position, but a decent punching position. This is an absolutely superb control position, useful for grappling and also fighting as well. Okay, so let's make a distinction between an arm wrap and a figure four arm wrap. Our preference always is for the figure four version. Usually it starts with an arm wrap, we insert the hand, and we get a figure of four. Okay, this is the one we're looking for, not the old-fashioned arm wrap for punching purposes. That's a top arm wrap. Okay, why do we call this a top arm wrap? Because the arm is on top of his own head, just like so. Okay, let's contrast that with a much less widely seen version of the arm wrap, a bottom arm wrap, where I take my opponent's hand and push it down. I go underneath his head and I hold here. Let's move around this. Like so. This too is a decent punching platform. It's not great, but it's not bad. Okay, but once again, its true value only really kicks in when we figure four the grip. It looks like I have an American lock, but I don't. An American lock doesn't happen until my elbow comes out. Now you've got an American lock. Okay, so here we have a bottom arm wrap figure four. When my opponent goes to yank his arm out, it's a difficult thing. It looks like you might be able to finish from here. There are circumstances you can. but I'm going to use it primarily as a control. Okay, we'll be looking at other high percentage ways to finish from here in subsequent videos. So this is a bottom figure 4 arm wrap, and this is a top figure 4 arm wrap, or gift wrap as it's often referred to. These two movements can often be used to set up excellent jujigatami opportunities. Okay, of any situation where I've walked my opponent's arm up beyond the center line, very often from here I will start by gripping my training partner's wrist so that I have an arm wrap in place. Then from here I will go forward and figure 4 the arm wrap. From that figure 4 position, it's an easy thing for me to wedge into my training partner and take a particularly strong and controlling form of attack on my training partner. From here, I just take my arm and flip the head, and as a result, we can quickly go into the jujigatami and a strong finish. The disadvantage of this method is it requires the use of both of my arms, so I don't get as much control of my opponent's leg. Okay, but everything, as I say, comes at a price. You have stronger control of your opponent's arm and weaker control of his legs. That's a trade-off you have to work with. So, from any situation where I've walked the arms on by, I go through and I capture my training partner's wrist. From here, we take the arm free and lock up. Now, our whole thing is to get our training partner turning. I bring my legs up. We find ourselves in a perfect attacking control position. We flip the head, just like so, and from the situation, the leg goes over first, and only then do we commit our buttocks to the floor, and we're in a winning situation. Contrast that with a bottom arm wrap scenario. We lock in, we get the figure of 4. My opponent reaches through and goes to separate my hands. That's exactly what we're looking for. From here, we come up and take advantage of his interlocked hands and find ourselves in the perfect position to go down into jujigatami and get our finishes. So we use the threat on the bottom arm wrap to convey a defensive reaction which sets up elbow vulnerability on the second arm. I threaten the bottom arm wrap. My opponent comes through to try and break my grips. I slide up, I pass my leg inside and find myself in the perfect attacking position. And as a result, we get a fine finish opportunity. Using the arm wraps in this fashion can greatly facilitate our various attempts to finish our opponent. All of the arm wraps are best done out of the same ratchet method of walking the arm that we saw earlier. So if I come in on my training partner and I start the action of walking the arm up on my training partner until we get the arm in place. From here, I bring the legs up, just like so. Look how I get a hold of my training partner's arm. Lock it, take it into place, and then start the action of turning and wedging in on my training partner. Now I flip the head, and from this position, the leg first, buttocks to the floor second, and we're in a position to win. Tommy, and its very nature, says a lot. It's very important you guys learn to distinguish between normal gravity-based pins and biomechanical pins. Okay? Normally, when we talk about pinning someone, it's a case of putting wedges around his body and reinforcing them with body weight. Okay, so that my body weight plays some important role here, and you can see this through my chest-to-chest positioning. Anytime you're chest-to-chest on your opponent, putting body weight down on your opponent, that's one form of pin. It's actually the most common and the most conventional form of pinning. But it's not the only form of pinning. There are also biomechanical pins, where I have almost no body weight upon my opponent, and yet I can pin them just as securely as I can using body weight and conventional methods. Jujigatami is a fine example. Always remember, the Japanese name for Jujigatami has a lot of wisdom woven into it. It means literally the cross pin or cross hold down. And so it focuses upon two critical aspects of the move. First, the cross body position, and secondly, they don't call it an arm lock, a submission hold. They call it the cross pin. In other words, You pin your opponent first and you break them second. But the primary element behind the move is to pin that man down. Now, that's interesting because technically you've got no body weight on him. When we go into a Jujigatami position, my weight is on the floor through my hips and buttocks, not on him. The only amount of weight I have in here is feeble. It's just the weight of one of my legs. Okay? What's holding him down is biomechanics. It's through the control of the head and shoulders. When he tries to come up, it's my left leg. From here, it's my left leg, the cross-faced leg, which holds him down by controlling the head. Okay? So even though I don't really have much body weight on top of him, my body weight is really going into the mat, not into him. We can use head control. The old cliche where the head goes, the body will follow is what's being used here. Now, unfortunately, it's almost never going to be enough because my opponent can scissor his legs, get up on top, and from here, now he's confounded the pin. Okay, we have to sweep him back down. So in reality, this is where the second element of the term Jujigatami kicks in, the idea of the cross. The cross position in a Jujigatami, that perpendicular angle, always gives me access to my opponent's legs. Now, when Brian goes to scissor his legs to get up, the most he'll get up to is a 45-degree angle. That's the most he'll ever get. But he'll never be able to scissor one leg over the other. And that's what's required to get up. And so if I have this grip, you know with confidence you can always return him to the mat. No matter how strenuously he tries to fight to get up, you'll always be able to return him to the floor and pin him. You have a bunch of options here. The most common, and if I only had one, I would choose this method of controlling the legs, is an outside scoop, where I take a false grip and I lock around my training partner's leg from the outside. The one problem associated with this method is my opponent can vigorously straighten his leg and kick free. Okay? Pretty vigorous then, Brian. Now, we can counter that with an inside scoop, just like so. When he goes to kick out now, it's significantly more difficult. And once again, when he tries to cross his legs, it's physically impossible. So those are two great ways to hold someone down. Okay? We have other options too. You can go with an inside scoop here. Okay? This too will make it very difficult for your opponent to move. And it's also very useful for drawing the hips closer to you, which gives us access to the fourth movement, the outside scoop far leg, where I place my foot on the floor, and now we play with the idea of a body weight pin. For the first time, you're actually sitting on your opponent now. Now a body weight is involved. So now it has both a biomechanical element and a body weight element. Very strong and powerful method of pinning. If I should find I'm off balance in any of these situations, we can always use his legs to rotate him through and continue to cycle apart, following our opponent around the body like so. We also have another method of gripping, where I go shoelace grip. When Brian tries to turn away from me and move away, this is an excellent way to stop people. Very good for people turning away from you. And your opponent always has two options in judo. You can turn into you, up. Okay, that's always one good option you can take. Or you can turn away from you. That's another good option you can take. Shoelace grips are designed to stop turnouts. When he goes to turn out, you can't get it started. Okay? They also greatly facilitate leg lock activity. If I feel I'm losing the elbow, from here it's relatively simple for me to wedge my legs through and lock up and make a quick switch into my training partner's legs for a nice finish. So let's quickly look at this again. We're going to start off with the training partner in a supine position. And we're going to start, as he locks up securely in here, we start off with this idea of biomechanical pinning. We know he needs to scissor his legs to get up. So we can prevent that by using the feature of the cross position and get down to the legs. When he tries to get up, the most he'll get is 45 degrees, and you'll always be able to return him to the mat. And we play between outside scoots and inside scoots. Near leg scoots and far leg scoots. Body weight pins, roll throughs, and in this fashion, we can consistently move around our training partner's body, always able to end up in the positions we like the most, controlling our opponent for extended periods of time. Okay? Let's give it a try, fellas. Moving around the body and pinning with Juji. We're working our way through Jujigatami from the top position. most of our focus has been on mounted positions so far. I want to introduce you now to what I believe is the single most important drill to gain mastery of Judogatame from top position and mounted position in particular. The reason I believe this is the most important drill is because it trains you to develop the attribute most associated with success with Judogatame, which is your ability to keep your hips close to your opponent's chest and shoulders. A simple rule of Judogatame, which anyone can understand, is this. The further my hips from my opponent's shoulders and chest in top position, the less successful I'm going to be. If you go to a beginner's class in Jiu-Jitsu, you're going to see things like this. Someone's mounted, and the instructor asks the guy on top to perform an armbar, and the guy does something like this. They stand up, space starts to develop, and you see there's a huge distance between my hips and my opponent's chest, and they throw their legs and sit back for horrible looking armbars like this. Okay? What's gone wrong? What's gone wrong is that, actually in that case, almost nothing went right. Many things went wrong, but the most important of which was the idea that my hips were so far from my opponent's chest, there's nothing stopping him just pulling his elbow inside. And now, when I go back to my Judogatame, there's nothing to grab. Okay? The amount of space you offer to your opponent to pull his elbow inside your hips will determine your success or failure with any Judogatame, and particularly from mounted position. You have to minimize the distance between his shoulder girdle and chest and your hips. It comes down to that. The more space there is, the easier it is for him to slip the elbow, and he's gone. So once again, here, a truly horrible looking Judogatame. He's in here, look how I come up, and there's so much space, you can drive a truck through that space. He pulls the elbow, you sit into Judogatame, and there's just nothing there to work with. Okay, and we see this pattern time and time again. You can't have any daylight between your chest, his chest and your hips. Everything has to be close to his shoulder girdle. If your hips ever leave his chest in the mounted position, you're not going to armbar anybody under competition circumstances. You have to train your body to minimize space. And this drill does exactly that. Okay. First part of the drill. We just take our training partner's arm past the center line. From here, we wedge our training partner's head so that our knee comes up to the crown of his head. I control my training partner's second arm so that I can fit my legs into a position where we wedge the shoulders adequately. He's going to have his arms together. From here, at no point did my hips ever leave my opponent's chest. And as a result, it's really easy for me to sit down with control and place my buttocks on the floor. Always placing my buttocks on the floor with control at my own speed. Never falling without control to my buttocks. Now, we're going to collect our training partner's legs and pull them in towards us. We're going to put our elbow over the top, and we're going to put our foot on the floor, and we're going to push in a way where our buttocks and legs never leave his chest. And we return where we came from. I take my knee back, I cradle my training partner's opposite leg, and I move back into the mounted position with my knees on his shoulder line. Now, I bring his elbow across. I begin to turn the corner. As always from here, I control the second leg. Look how I bring my head over one leg so I can sweep everything around the corner, and at no point did my hips leave my opponent's chest. And as a result, I can switch from one side to the other. We draw the legs in, we push off our leg, and we return back where we came from. Every time we return, look how my hips stay over my training partner's chest and never lose contact. My knees up by his shoulder line, and we just go patiently and calmly from one side across to the other. At no point do you see my chest leaving my training partner, my hips leaving my training partner's chest. I don't want to sit up. Now my hamstring has left his chest and he can pull through. So every time we go to move, look out, from these situations, I do so in a way where I can simply extend my leg and keep weight over the top of him and lock everything in place. As a result, we can effortlessly sit down and move across our training partner's body. Done in this way, I make repeated movements forward and across my opponent's body from one side to the other. At no point do you see me losing contact. That's what we want to do. Let's look now at what we want to avoid. What I can never accept in this drill is turning and coming up. Now there's no contact between my legs and his chest. He can easily pull free and it's all gone. Every time we go to turn the corner, we want to do so in a way where my weight is on him. I cannot come up into situations where my hips come off him. He pulls and he's gone. Always there's contact. If I'm coming up and losing contact, I'm failing. So always we want to create situations where my weight is on him. And in this way, we brush from side to side without ever losing contact of our legs to our opponent's chest. Time spent on this drill is some of the best time you can ever invest in your path to Jujigatami mastery. It's probably the single fastest way to increase your skill set with top position Juji. Take time to work the drill. It's a little uncomfortable. At the start, it can be a little frustrating. Bear in mind one very important directive. The feature of your movement which will make you succeed or fail with this drill is mostly your head movement. If your head is stationary, the drill is almost impossible. My opponent locks his hands from here. If my head doesn't move, I have to start rising. So what I have to do is move my head across and towards the center line. It's that movement of the head across the center line which makes the move overall possible. Look, if my head stays stationary, it's very, very hard for me to move. But when my head moves from one side confidently to the other, it's a simple thing for me to go from one side to the other. Look how as my head moves to my left, my right leg becomes unweighted and it becomes possible for me to turn. From here, look how my leg extends. My head has to go forward in order to accomplish that. And this way, I can get it done. Don't think that this is an act of flexibility. I'm 52 with a hip replacement and a crippled leg. If I can do this, I know you can do it 10 times better. It has very little to do with flexibility and a lot to do with head placement as you move from one position to another. Now we've looked in some detail at Jujigatami from the mounted position. Now let's switch our attention to Jujigatami from side pins, from positions where we're across our training partner's side. Let's bear in mind immediately that when we go to work from any side position, you have a clear choice between attacking the arm that is on the near side, the one that's closest to you, and attacking the arm on the far side. So if I'm across my training partner's side, he always presents two arms to me, a near side arm and a far side arm. You must, if you're going to call yourself a master of Jujigatami, be equally adept at attacking both arms, both near side and far side. You must also be adept at moving from one side of your opponent's body to the other. This is an important skill and is intimately tied up with the notion of attacking from Jujigatami. Now, let's start off with attacking the far side arm. Even though near side arms are a valuable part of our arsenal, I think it's fair to say in top level competition, the most successful armbar attacks from side pins typically involve attacking the far arm. There are two main methods of operating here. The first method involves me taking my arm across from a cross-face position to a situation where my thumb goes underneath my training partner's tricep. My second hand blocks my training partner's hip, and I make a transition from a side pin around to a north-south pin. And from here, we do our arm lock attacks. That's one great way of operating. Another very popular method of operating is to get an underhook situation on my training partner's arm, and from here to spin around my training partner's body and end up in a Jujigatami situation. These two forms of attacking the far arm, there are others, but those two forms account for a very high percentage, a very large percentage, of the successful Jujigatami attacks that my students use, and also just people in general. Those are not new attacks. They've been around forever, and I'm sure many of you watching this video have seen these attacks before. What I want to offer you is details on those attacks that make a difference and enhance your performance so you can get the job done better on more resistant, skilled opponents. Let's start off with going into a north-south situation and attacking the Jujigatami from a north-south position. Let's move over this way so people can start to see some detail. Okay, we're going to start off. I'm out to my training partner's right-hand side. I'm currently in a side pin. I'm going to have to learn how to transition into a north-south pin. If I start on two knees here with my training partner in a fairly standard cross-body position, I'm going to take my cross-face arm and I'm going to wedge it right in here so that my forearm becomes a wedge underneath my training partner's shoulder and my tricep wedges my training partner's head. So I've changed from one form of head control to another. The classic form of head control is typically a cross-face head control, which makes it difficult for my opponent to turn into me. That's the resistance that it gives. In a reverse cross-face, I put my tricep over and I hug back towards myself and put my thumb underneath my training partner's tricep. His arms are in tight, my thumb goes in underneath the tricep. Now, if I just walk around to the other side, my opponent can follow me. So I start walking, he walks with me, and nothing happens. Okay? We just end up moving around the mat without result. So it's very important that I take my free hand and I place it right here as a wedge in my training partner's hip. This means that when I put my head down on his chin and start the action of walking around into a north-south, he can't follow me. And as a result, I can move all the way around as his elbows are in tight. I'm going to take my wrist up onto his rib cage and underneath, just like so. Now, this is where things get interesting. I'm going to drive my shoulder towards my training partner's opposite hip, and we're going to come up into a sprawl situation, just like so. As a result, we've got excellent control of our training partner's arm. You will notice that when I get underneath his arm, there's a rotation. I start palm down, like so. I take my shoulder to his elbow. The further my shoulder from his elbow, the more he can slip his elbow inside mine and escape. So I want to take my shoulder to his elbow joint. I want to take my knees off the mat. When I do so, I go into a sprawl motion, just like so. I do not want to be symmetrical here. I want asymmetrical legs turning, like so. And as a result, there's complete control of my training partner's elbow. The more shallow my hand position, the weaker my control of his arm. So I want to make sure I'm wrist deep in his armpit, and I turn my hand from palm down to palm up. It's that which gives me total control. Now, let's talk directionality of force. When I take the north-south position on my training partner and I hook my left arm into his left arm, it is very important that I drive in a diagonal line from his shoulder to his opposite hip. Do not drive straight down the body. When I drive straight down the body, he can just bring his elbow to the floor and bring his elbow inside. I want to drive across to the opposite hip, here. It's that which puts an effective wedge around his arm. It makes it very difficult for him to free his elbow. It also means it becomes very easy for me to walk forward and put a wedge behind his back, and then to step over his head and create situations where we can easily sit back into a Jujigatami lock. And from here we're ready to play. Once again, from a situation where we start off across our training partner's side, we're first going to take our elbow over the top and wedge in. My thumb goes underneath my training partner's tricep. My elbow goes from the head and starts coming down towards his shoulder, blocking it in just like so. Now, with his far shoulder blocked, I now focus my attention on blocking the hip. My ear goes down to my training partner's hip, and I start the action of rotating around his body. I slide back so that I can get wrist deep inside my training partner's armpit. Then I take my left shoulder to my opponent's right hip, turning my body like so. When he goes to pull his arm free, it won't be easy. Now we're in the perfect position to go on the attack. The first attack involves me stepping over my training partner's head and placing wedges around his body, so that as we sit back, we end up in perfect position to lock in to a quarter Jujigatami position. From here, it's relatively easy for me to pommel my foot from one side across to the other, and now we find ourselves in the perfect position to attack with Jujigatami. Let's have a look at all those details again. We start off across our training partner's side. Ultimately, we're looking to penetrate with our wrist as far into our training partner's armpit as possible. So, I start off with a fairly conventional pin across my training partner's side. I bring my elbow over and I control the head. Now, my elbow comes up to his shoulder and locks in just like so. My thumb goes underneath my training partner's elbow. I take my hand and I wedge the opposite side of his hip, and I bring my ear down to my training partner's hip. As a result, we're in perfect position to start a slide back. That slide back takes my wrist inside my training partner's armpit. I'm now in the perfect position to drive forward on my training partner, and we drive our ear to his opposite hip. Now I step over my training partner's head and we bring my knee in place. From here, it's a simple thing to lock, switch, and find ourselves in the perfect attacking position. I pommel my foot across his body, and we find ourselves now able to control his leg in ways where we can easily keep him down on the floor. Let's have a look at that again. Some key elements. I need ultimately to get everything through underneath here. The question is, how are you going to do that on someone whose arms are in a sound defensive position? There's our initial pin. From here, I go in, control the head, then my elbow comes up to the shoulder. From here, my hand blocks my training partner's hip on the opposite side, and I start to move around the corner. Now I drop down the body and I get my elbow inside. I turn my body and lock in place. From here, my right hand goes on the floor so I can step over my training partner's head and trap it. My knee comes in and I switch my arms so that my left hand becomes a base of support. I don't want to fall uncontrollably back this way. That's a disaster. When I fall and switch my hands, I fall with my body weight supported. And as a result, it's an easy thing to pommel my foot across to the opposite side and then pitch down to the legs and end up in a winning position. Let's have a look at that from a different angle. From a situation where we start off across our training partner's side, we trap the head, trap the shoulder, and block the hip. I put my ear down to his hip and I start to move around the corner. Now I slide down the body and I take my hand across and lock. My palm turns up and I drive my shoulder to the opposite hip, my ear making contact. As a result, it's very easy for me to start the action of stepping over and trapping my opponent's head. When he tries to move the head, it's wedged between my legs. Now, my second knee comes in and I pass the arm so that my hand can go on the floor, so that when I commit to the mat, I do so in a way where my head stays up above his head. I don't collapse to my shoulder on the mat. And as a result, it's very easy for us to turn our foot across the opposite side, come down to the legs, and from here, we're in a winning position. When he tries to come up, his near leg is trapped, and we've got complete control of the Jujigatami, and we're ready to finish in our usual various fashions. One more time. From a situation where I start off across my training partner's side, we have a fairly conventional pin. I control the head, migrate up to the shoulder, hand goes in and blocks the hip. I move around the corner to a north-south type position. I slide down the body so I can bring everything through and lock. Now, there's my initial pressure. When he tries to pull his arm free, it's exceptionally difficult. Now from here, I step over the head and lock the head. I wedge the upper back and find myself in a perfect position to post my hand on the floor, and we sit now into a well-controlled Jujigatami. From here, the second leg comes over, and there's the initial control that we always favor. When he tries to come up on top, etc., it's so difficult. And then from here, we can take our time and go into the various finishes that we favor in this position. This is an excellent way to use the principles of wedging in operation. Everything we do is to wedge the head, the hips, and ultimately the elbow. One more time, just putting emphasis on the idea of wedging as the key to this move. So, the first wedge will be placed over my training partner's head. There's the first wedge, controlling the head. Now I need to go in and control the shoulder. So I reposition the wedge. Now, I need to wedge the far hip. So I put my forearm right in here. Now, I need to wedge the far hip. So I bring my ear in like so. When he goes to move his hips, it's caught between my head and my right wrist. There's no reason now why I can't move around his body. Now I move down his body and I put a wedge underneath my training partner's arm into the armpit. I tighten the wedge by turning my hand from palm down to palm up. And as a result, I can now make my left shoulder into a wedge supported by body weight like so. Now, the other wedge in operation is my left ear my head wedges his hip and my elbow wedges his elbow. From this position, look how now I've wedged the hip successfully, the arm successfully. I need to wedge the head. So I step over the top and lock. I don't lock a triangle, just lock like so. My knees come in. So I have the head wedged, the arm wedged. The hip I've lost, that's fine, it's served its purpose already. But I can't fall in an uncontrolled fashion to the mat. So I switch my arms and I go elbow to elbow to wedge his elbow to my chest. Now I put my hand on the floor so that when I do sit to the mat, it's done with total control. Again, when I commit my hips to the mat, it must be done in a controlled fashion where I fall at my pace, not his. From here, I take my foot and pommel it across to a full Jujigatami. So I go from a weak quarter Juji to a strong full Juji. From here, so many ways we could go. I could feed my foot in for 3/4 Juji. I could take my legs across into a head scissor Juji. I leave that all up to you. That's all your personal preference. But at a minimum, we should have a good full Jujigatami here. Whether you elect to cross your feet, whether you elect to stay open, these are all things we saw earlier in the video. That's your choice. Go with what you like. From here, I scoop elbow deep inside his leg, and as a result, when he tries to get up, you control his ability to get up or not. Look how I use my cross-face leg to return him to the mat anytime I wish. And from here, so many ways for us to separate my training partner's arms in the various fashions that we saw earlier. And as always, breaking mechanics, my opponent's left arm goes over my left hip, his left hand towards my left armpit, two hands controlling my training partner. I make the fulcrum higher than usual. I bring my hips up off the floor so our direct channel of force goes in two directions and we get a strong finish as a result. Now, one of the great themes of this video is the idea that there are different forms of Jujigatami, a multiplicity of forms of Jujigatami, and each one has good and bad points to it. A form of Jujigatami which you often learn in beginner's class is what I refer to my students as a quarter Jujigatami. If you just lie down, Placido. This refers to any situation where I have one leg short here in the armpit and a cross-face leg. Okay, and you will often see in a beginner's class this as a demonstration of Jujigatami, the Ambar. Let's understand something. Here, only one leg, my cross-face leg, goes across the body. So you have some degree of control of your opponent's head, but almost no control of your opponent's torso, because we lack the conventional torso leg going across the body here. Here I have two legs across my opponent's body. In the quarter Jujigatami, you only have one. As a result, if I were able to separate my training partner's hands, there's nothing controlling Placido's torso. So it's very easy for him now to turn out and escape the lock. It's also pretty easy for him to put a hand on my cross-face leg, dislodge it, and there's literally nothing else holding him in place until they often turn up. So this is not a particularly strong finishing position. However, quarter Jujigatami is extremely useful as a means of entering into Jujigatami, especially from side positions, both top and bottom. Let's have a look at this. Lie down. Just lie down. Okay, if I'm across my opponent's side, almost all of the best entries into Jujigatami from side position involve first going to a quarter Jujigatami, and then, as I'm going to advocate to you, a switch to a stronger form. What I want you guys to do is to see quarter Jujigatami for what it is. It's a great way to enter into arm bars from side positions, both top and bottom, but don't try to use it as a finish, okay? Think of it as a two-stage process. You enter with quarter and you finish with full. So, for example, if I have an underhook on my training partner, this would be a perfect time for us to come up and sit down into a quarter Jujigatami. From the quarter Jujigatami, I touch my two knees together. So my my short leg touches the long leg at the knee, and as a result we quickly bring the foot through, and now you have a strong finishing position. From here you would have the choice of closing the juji, going into a 3/4 juji gatame, whatever you want. But the main thing is you get 2 legs across your opponent's body. Don't enter and then finish with the same move that you entered with. Okay, understand that this is a good entry method but not a good finishing method. So our key focus here is always touching the knees, and then we pommel the second foot across, and now you have a good finishing position. Okay, so if I entered in another fashion, I moved around, and from here I enter with quarter juji gatame. Okay, but I'm not going to try and finish from here. I will always take the extra time to touch one knee to the other and pass my second foot through. Only now will I go into the actual finish. Use juji gatame for what it is, an excellent way to enter into the arm lock position. But don't try to extend it further than it's capable. It's not a good finishing position. Same thing from bottom. If I have an opponent pinning me, and from here we slip the head inside, we throw our legs up, and we end up in quarter juji gatame. Again, I'm not going to try and finish from here. I'm always going to take the extra time to touch 2 knees together, pommel my second foot across, and now we'll go into our finishes. Okay? When it's time to finish, get 2 legs across. When it's time to enter, the quarter juji gatame is great. But when you want to go that extra step and actually extend the opponent's arm and cause the break, take the extra time, pommel the second leg across, and work with the security of 2 legs instead of 1. We just looked at what is arguably the most common form of juji gatame out of side control, which involves transitioning to a north-south position and creating a series of wedges around our opponent's head, shoulders, and elbow, and getting through to the break. That may be the most popular, but there's a damn close second, and that's the spinning juji gatame. This too is a very, very popular form of juji, very, very effective out of side control. Again, this is a well-known move. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and re-describe the move in terms of what actually makes it work. And this is the theory of wedging. Remember, a wedge is just a means of inhibiting movement in your opponent. Just as a wedge placed underneath a door will stop a door from swinging shut in a breeze, so too, wedges around your opponent's body stop your opponent from moving in ways which enable him to resist. Remember, these are moves where everyone knows what they are. These moves have been around for eons. Everyone above white belt level knows what they are, knows what they're supposed to do to avoid them. So the question is not whether you know the move or not. That's not the issue. The issue is, can you perform it on someone who knows what it is and knows how to stop it? That's the interesting issue. Your ability to do this is going to come down to your ability to set very strong wedges around your opponent's head, hips, and elbow. If you can do that, you're going to finish a lot of people. If you can't, you're not going to finish anybody. So, let's look at a situation where we're down side control top. In the previous move, we basically moved around the other guy's body into a north-south situation. And I used my left arm to control his left arm to get the juji on the left arm. Okay? His left arm is the far arm, that's the one that was my target. My left controlled his left. In a spinning juji gatame, my right controls his left. Unlike the previous move, this time we require an underhook. Okay, I need to have my arm underneath his, like so. This is an underhook. His left arm, my right arm underneath it, like this. If I can get some kind of underhook, for whatever reason, spinning juji gatame is on. It might be because I'm in a north-south situation, a knee-on-belly situation, and my opponent posts on my knee in a rather naive fashion. That will easily give me an underhook. Okay? It might be because I went for more sophisticated setups where, say, for example, I threatened an American lock, and he straightened his arm to avoid the American, and he ended up giving me an underhook. It might be for other reasons. I'm here with my arm underneath, and I pass the hand through into a bottom arm wrap, figure forward, and he bridges over his left shoulder, straightens out his arm, and ends up giving me an underhook in place. For whatever reason, you found yourself there with an underhook. It doesn't matter how you get there, the main thing is you're there. Okay, what am I going to do to ensure that I get this armbar, a spinning armbar, on a guy who knows what a spinning armbar is, knows how to stop it? I said earlier, it's all about my ability to wedge the head, the hips, and the elbow. How am I going to do this? Okay, we've got an underhook. We're ready to start things rolling. First things first, never attack the spinning jujigatami until your opponent's shoulder is off the mat. If his shoulder is on the mat, there's no spinning juji. Why? As his shoulder goes down to the mat, when I try to spin around my training partner, there's no control of the shoulder. And he just slips his elbow free, and he's gone. So the first rule, we've got to elevate your opponent's shoulder. Only then can I control the shoulder girdle, which is the single most fundamental directive of any jujigatami attack, no matter what. Okay? So the good news is you've got an underhook. So I'm going to take my second arm out, and I'm going to use that as a post arm. That post arm is going to make it easy for me to get his shoulder off the mat. If I don't have a post arm and I try to pull, I have no strength. So I put out a post arm, and now I have the strength to draw his shoulder off the mat. Now, something very important is starting to happen, and I want you to take note of it. Watch my right elbow. When I take his shoulder off the mat, I take my right elbow inside and I touch his sternum. Here's the most common mistake I see when people attempt a spinning juji. They come up and they pull the guy off the floor and their elbow doesn't move. The elbow stays on the outside of the lat muscle. That means there is no effective wedging taking place here. So that when I go to turn, he just pommels his hand inside, and as a result, he's gone. What we need to do, once we take his elbow off the floor, let's have a look at that again, is it shoulders down on the mat. From here, we put on the post hand. I take my elbow off the floor, and I lift him. Watch my right elbow. It goes inside and touches his sternum, so that my elbow is here on the sternum. I draw him up, and there it is. Once my elbow touches the sternum, I can play a trick. My right shoulder wedges his elbow. Now, the good news is you've got the wedge in place. The bad news is there's nothing to stop him moving his elbow away from me and freeing it. So what I need to do is get my body around the corner and get a wedge behind the elbow. I do that by putting my ear on his hip and coming up into a north-south position, tripoded, just like so. So now his hips are wedged by my head and my right shoulder. His elbow is wedged by my chest and my wrist. The only thing that isn't wedged is his head. That's what's next. I'm going to put a wedge in behind his head, a wedge in front of his head, and we're going to sit down into the juji position. Now there's no reason why I can't pass my foot across and end up in the perfect position to control the jujigatami. Let's have a look at all of that again. Okay, however it's happened, we've secured an underhook on our training partner. From the cross-body position, we bring our hand through and post. As a result, I can bring his shoulder off the mat quite easily. I bring my elbow into the sternum and my shoulder goes over his elbow. Now, let's avoid this oh so common mistake. People try to go directly from side control straight to the other side. They just go from here and step over. So often I see this, and it always results in an uncontrolled, inadequate looking move. Okay? Put an intermediary in place. The intermediary is north-south tripod. I put my elbow down, my ear down, and I tripod right here. When he goes to yank his arm out, it feels impossible. This is where I control people. I put my leg in as a wedge, my second leg is a wedge, and I sit down, perfectly controlling his shoulder joint. Now I just bring my foot across to the far side, I hook into the legs and find myself in the perfect winning position. And from here, we're ready to play. Now, what do I do differently from most people in this spinning Jujigatami? What I do is I break it down into distinct steps. First, there's a heavy emphasis on wedging. And secondly, I never go directly from his left-hand side to his right-hand side. I use north-south as an intermediary. So I never go from one side of the body to the other. I go from one side of the body to north-south, and from north-south to the far side of the body. Adding that extra step greatly strengthens your wedge game. And as a result, it's much harder for your opponent to extract and pull his arm free. Let's have a look at this again. We go in on our training partner and we score the underhook. Initially, when I come in here, look how my arm and head play a role. The further my head from my wrist, my chin from my wrist, the more play there is for him to pommel inside. So I always want to use my chin here and my wrist and my chin close together so that there's an effective wedge around his shoulder. Now I come in tight, my elbow goes inside and my ear goes down to his hip. From this situation, it's so easy for us now to hold his arm in place with that strong wedging. His hips are wedged, his elbows wedged. Now he's got to wedge the head. From here, I pommel across to the far side, and there we have a good winning position to work with. One more time, the same. We have the underhook in place. From here, look, I put my ear down on his hip. I come around to a north-south tripod position. I lock in 1, 2, so that when we sit, everything's wedged in place. Now it's a simple thing for us to draw the legs across and go into any one of the various finishing positions that we know and like from side position. Now, we've looked at Jujigatami from side position. We've looked at what I believe are the two most high percentage ways of entering into Juji from side. One was a north-south transition, where we came in, hooked our opponent's arm, and went into the Juji. The other was the spinning Jujigatami, where we start with an underhook and spin around our opponent's body. I like to use north-south as an intermediary, and we control our opponent into the Juji. The key ideas in both moves were the idea of strong wedging around our opponent's head, hips, and elbow to make these otherwise rather conventional moves unconventionally strong and punch through resistance and get to a win. Let's look now at a move you don't see so often. That's a reverse underhook. First, I got to explain myself. What is a reverse underhook? Okay, normally an underhook involves a situation where my right arm goes underneath my training partner's left arm, like so. And you've all seen this kind of situation on many occasions. A reverse underhook is one where my left arm goes underneath my training partner's left arm. And from this situation, we hold in like so. Now, once we have a reverse underhook in place, what I like to do is to wedge the far hip, just like so. And we start the action of walking around our training partner's body. And this creates situations where his arm gets well trapped between my elbows and my hip. And as a result, we're able to drive forward on our training partner and put a wedge right here next to his shoulder. My leg goes over my training partner's head, and as a result, when we sit back, we find ourselves with a particularly strong form of Jujigatami. It's a quarter Jujigatami, but it's with an over grip like so. And as a result, we get quick finishes down on the mat. I'll demonstrate it from the other side. So, however it's happened, we take our right arm and put it underneath his right armpit. Often, this occurs in situations where I have a sit-through towards my training partner's legs. I move around my training partner's body into a quasi-north-south position, and from here I form a wedge where my knee comes through just like so. Now I step over my training partner's head, and when I sit back, my two knees pinch in to the familiar quarter judogatami position. Normally, I'm not a big fan of quarter judogatami. I tend to use it to go into other forms of juji. But this one I am a big fan of because we have the vaunted overwrap grip, which dramatically increases the braking power and the general wedging effect that holds my opponent in place. When he tries to spin out of the quarter juji, it's very, very difficult. And the braking power from here is very impressive. So once again, from a situation where we're across our training partner's side, we drive our elbow inside, just like so. From here, I wedge my training partner's hip on the near side, I wedge his armpit on the far side with my elbow, and we start the action of walking around our training partner's body. From here, I go forward and drive my knee in as a wedge, and my knee goes over my training partner's head. So that as we start the action of sitting back, it's quite simple for us to extend our leg and then sit back into a punishingly strong judogatami. When he tries to spin out, move out, etc., it's very, very difficult, and we get a phenomenally strong move. What we want to avoid in these situations is rising. I don't want my hips to rise. That's exactly when we get this rather sad looking result. When I place my reverse underhook in and move around my training partner's body, if I start rising, he pulls his elbow free and you end up with nothing. Okay? It's very important when I start moving around my training partner's body that as I come around the corner, look how my knee wedges on one side. I step over my training partner's head, and at no point does anything rise. Okay, we just sit back and our knees point up to the ceiling. And from here, we get the strong braking pressure that we require. Now, I'm going to throw in a detail here which makes a big difference when you're trying to use this move live. You guys know that as a general rule in my methods of teaching jiu-jitsu, I often make use of a principle called double trouble. This is the idea that whenever I go to attack one joint lock on one limb, 95% of the resistance comes from the limb on the other side. So if I go to perform a leg lock on my opponent's right leg, 95% of the resistance is going to come from his left leg. If I go to perform an armbar judogatami on his right arm, 95% of the initial resistance is going to come from the left arm. When you understand this principle, you understand very clearly that anytime you go to attack a given limb, it's always a good idea to control the other limb as well. That's double trouble. Whenever you do this, you literally double the amount of trouble, sometimes more, that you're going to cause your opponent when it's time to escape. So let's look how double trouble plays into this particular move. Okay, we've got our reverse underhook in place and locked in just like so. As a result, we're able to move around our training partner's body. But you will notice that as I come around the other side and form my wedges, I have his other arm as well. And I cup it and hold it here. So that when my opponent goes to turn out, he physically can't do it because I'm also controlling the second arm. When he tries to turn into me, he can't because I control the near arm. And we've got a brutal braking pressure on our training partner. By controlling both of my training partner's arms in this position, it makes it so difficult for my opponent to form any kind of effective escape. If he tries to turn up into me, it's so difficult with both arms controlled. And from here, we get the strong breaks that we're looking for. So one more time. From a situation where I have a reverse underhook on my training partner, and I start the action of moving around. Look how before I slide into the judogatami, my arm goes through here and locks up on this side as well. So that as I pitch forward and block my training partner at the legs, look how from this position, I draw him into place, and there's both arms controlled. And there's a particularly brutal form of arm lock. The reason why it's so strong in this position is because I'm using the overwrap grip, which takes a normally rather weak quarter judogatami position and turns it into a devilishly strong one. When you add the principle of double trouble, you've got a real arm breaker on your hands. Okay, we're looking at the idea of attacking judogatami from side positions. So far, everything we've done has been attacks on the far arm. If we have a training partner lying down, whenever I'm across my training partner's side, we always have a near arm and a far arm. So far, we've looked at attacks on the far arm. We've been north-south, we went spinning armbar with an underhook, and we went reverse underhook as well. 3 excellent attacks on the far arm. The natural question is, what about the near arm? Can I do something with that? The answer is absolutely. Let's have a look at a very, very effective method of attacking the near arm, which often catches opponents by surprise. Most of your opponents are expecting duty attacks on the far arm. Statistically, they tend to succeed much more than others. The overwhelming majority of successful attacks in international competition occur on the far arm, so people tend to get lazy on the near arm. Remember, some things never change with Jujigatami. We always want control of the shoulder. The method we're going to look at now is not the most controlling method, but it's very fast and very effective. From a situation where I'm across my training partner's side, I'm going to hit a sit through on my training partner just like so. And I'm going to put my wrist over my training partner's wrist and hold just in here. That's going to enable me to surreptitiously put my hip underneath my training partner's elbow. My knee is right there next to his shoulder. Okay, I'm not doing anything fancy here. I'm just surreptitiously placing my thigh in contact with his lat muscle and wedging my hip underneath his elbow. I don't make it obvious when I do this. So we start off across our training partner's side. He's worried about the attack on the far arm. I get him thinking about the far arm, and then I just sit through and I'm ready to go. Okay. From this position, I'm going to take my hand and I'm going to put it out wide for base. So my hand that was hugging my training partner's far side now comes out wide for base, just like so. I'm going to bring my left foot back towards my right foot. And then from here in one motion, I'm going to rise in such a way that my hip stays in contact with his lat muscle. Do not rise in a way where you lose contact with your opponent. That's not what we want. I want constant contact of my hips and quadricep with his body. And then in one motion, I'm just going to hit a cross step where I go over my training partner's body, just like so. Now from here, my leg cuts back and we form an effective wedge over our training partner's head. There's no reason now why I can't collect my training partner's arm and go directly into the Jujigatami. So once again, we're here across our training partner's side. I create an initial threat on the far arm, but really I'm interested in the near arm. From here, I go in, I catch my training partner, and in one motion, I just throw my leg right across the top and quickly scoop. Now I've got an excellent wedge around head and arm. When he tries to pull his arm free, it's so damn difficult. Then we go 3/4 juji, and we're right in to a strong breaking sequence. Once again, we're here across our training partner's side. As we hit our initial control, look how I wedge my knee all the way up by his shoulder, and then from this position I just quickly cast my foot across and wedge. My two knees, my knee turns in like so, my foot and my knee close together, and we're in the perfect position to roll through into Jujigatami, either right from on top or falling down, our buttocks on the floor from a different angle. We're in here across our training partner's side. Look how I start by wedging my knee up to his shoulder. My hand comes out as a base of support. My left foot comes towards my right foot, and I bring everything up onto his stomach. Do not create space. You should be on him like so. So he carries all of your weight. In one motion, I throw my leg across the top. I immediately back heel and turn my knee down like so, forming an effective wedge. So when he goes to yank his arm free, it's stunningly difficult. And as a result, you can quickly pass the leg across into a 3/4 juji and get strong breaks. One more time, we lock up with our training partner in place. I bring my knee in at post. In one motion, I just throw everything across, and there's the 3/4 juji for the finish. In this way, we can move very quickly into a strong and unexpected attack on your opponent's near arm. Always start off by creating a viable threat on the far arm to distract your opponent. You'll have a lot of success on the near arm. Now, we've been attacking Jujigatami from side position. We've seen a distinction between far side attacks and near side attack. Most of the time, far side attacks are considered slightly more high percentage, but near side attacks done well are a valuable addition to your arsenal. You've got to have them. You've got to be able to threaten both sides. You've got to keep your opponent honest with this. The better you get at attacking one, the easier it's going to be to attack the other. Now, a move which I strongly favor when I go into attack on the near side is one which involves a grip which I've been emphasizing a lot in this video, the overwrap grip. Very often we'll be across our training partner's side. And from here, I'm going to take my hand and put my hand inside his. I take my hand and I go inside his. And all I do is I focus on punching my arm around the corner and scooping up my training partner's arm, just like so. So I have a hand on his elbow. Okay, so once again, my opponent's hands are in a sound defensive position, and we're cross-side and we've elected to sit our body through. So we're sitting on a hip, just like so. I put my hand in the inside position, I punch everything around the corner until I can get a hold of his elbow, just like so. Okay. From this position, my hand is going to come out on this side, and I'm going to hit a step over my training partner's head. I'm going to bring my head down towards the floor, and I'm going to sit my legs in just like so. Now from here, I catch my training partner at the hip, and we end up with this brutal version of Jujigatami. As my opponent tries to move away from me, it's incredibly tight and very, very strong indeed. And from here, we get a particularly strong finish down on the mat. So once again, we start off across our training partner's side, just in like so. Now, I punch my hand through and around until I get a situation where I get in and I score my training partner's elbow. The first method we're going to look at involves stepping the cross-face leg over first. So I take cross-face leg, hand goes out, and from here I turn and I form the wedge right in here with a quarter Jujigatami. This creates enormous braking pressure on my training partner's arm. It's an incredible way to lock up your opponent's arm on the near side. So once again, we're here, across side. I hit a sit through. From the sit through, I pass my arm through and around and score my training partner's elbow. The first part of the moves involves stepping my cross-face leg over his head. Then from here, I turn my body down so that I go chest down to the floor. I fit my foot into this good attacking position. I catch my training partner's hip, and there's an incredibly tight and strong finishing position down on the mat. That's our first version. Now, let's look at a different version that we can also make use of. The start is identical. I sit through, I post my hand through and lock up. But this time, instead of leading with the cross-face leg, I'm going to lead with my wedge leg. So I'm going to come towards my training partner and take my foot back towards my own knee and drive my knee across, just like so. From this position, I step the cross-face leg over the top, and we end up, once again, in that incredibly strong braking position, ready to win. So once again, this time instead of leading with the cross-face leg, I lead with the wedge leg. So I punch in, secure control of my training partner's elbow. From here, I come up, and look how my knee slides right in. My foot there is a butterfly hook underneath my training partner's shoulder. Now my head comes down, the leg goes over, and we end up in this incredibly strong braking position, ready to get the win. One more time. The basic choice I have here, once I pommel inside and lock my training partner, is to either go over with the cross face first and the wedge second, or as we're doing now, to bring everything in and lock in this good attacking position. My knee comes up to my training partner's opposite shoulder, and now we're in perfect position to put on severe braking pressure. These two methods of using the overwrap grip will greatly amplify your success rate in attacking Jujigatami on the near arm.